Thee, my blessed Savior, I surrender all.
When we see that, it's clear. It's very clear as to what Paul is trying to tell to Timothy. It says that these are the signs of last days. People are going to become very selfish as possible. In the midst of that, it's been taught, even from the pulpits, it's been taught how to be selfish, how to start to look into your own self. I am not much for that. Yes, we need to know where we stand. We need to know what is our value. That's all true. But more than that, we get into a point where we start to teach too much of our own self as to who you are, what you are capable of. And Paul is repeatedly saying these things, that not to think about yourself more than what you're supposed to think. And don't think about yourself more than what you're supposed to. We end up scoffing, we end up becoming proud. There is too much of pride that's going to come in. We were reading from 2 Timothy chapter 3. It says, verse 3 onward, it says, they will be unloving and they will be unforgiving. The love aspect won't come in. Why? It starts with that. In the last days, they will become selfish. When you are becoming selfish, how would love come? How will love come? It says they will be unloving and they will be unforgiving. Somebody has done something wrong against you, hatred. You're going to be filled up with hatred. Please remember these. These are the same many things that's been mentioned in Romans chapter 1. It's not just in Romans chapter 1. It's the same things are mentioned in Galatians. Same things are mentioned in Ephesians. It's the same things that are mentioned there. When in the last days, these things are going to take place. In 1 Peter, these same things are mentioned. James mentions these things. Revelation mentions these things. John is mentioning these things. Why is it mentioned? The reason is pretty simple. Because it's more like a prophecy that's been coming in and it's being fulfilled. It's being fulfilled. They're going to become unloving. They're going to be unforgiving. And hatred will be filled within them. They will slander others and have no self-control. What I feel like doing, I will do it. Whatever I feel like doing. No self-control. Zero self-control. I feel like doing this today, I'll do it. Somebody tells me to do something like this and that just feels very attractive to me, I will do it. Who are you to question me? That's the world that we are living in. And that sounds very cool. That sounds very cool. I have no rules. I have no rules, nobody to control. It comes to a point where the other day I had seen this big poster in one of these areas in Bangalore when I was riding my bike and coming. I had seen a big advertisement of one of the jeans company, and it said that if sin, I don't know what is the brand of that jeans, but it says that if sin feels so good, how can it be wrong? It was a massive poster, a huge poster. From any part of that region you can see that poster, and it said that if sin feels so good, how can it be wrong? Advertisements started to come that way. It is so sensual these days. Advertisements are becoming so sensual, and there was an era, at least this era, now it's an era wherein advertisements are becoming more emotional, which is way better than what happened when at least 3-4 years back. At least 4 years back, the advertisements until then were more sensual. I went into one of the malls the other day and I saw a huge poster that was running 4 floors down, and it had one of the brands of innerwears. And there is this lady who is wearing an innerwear, and that was the poster that was running down. And I saw that the second look that I had was on a little child. A mother was coming with 2 boys. And there was the eldest boy would be probably around 8 years old, and the youngest was around 4 years old. Both of them looking at the poster. Both of them, and they're carefully looking at the poster, and the mother is not looking. Again, the mother is just holding the child as they are coming up the escalator. And I saw that, and that just broke my heart. What are you feeding into these young little ones? These are normal posters that are coming. These days, these have become normal. I couldn't take it. I just went to the management and said, what have you put up? And they said that is a marketing strategy. What marketing strategy? What are you trying to market into the minds of the little children? What are we trying to market? How much are we as parents even thinking that the world is is trying to corrupt these children, and how much of a word of God are we giving to our little children? No self-control. I feel like doing something, I do it. Who are you to question? There is no moral law. There is no moral law giver. I don't believe in a God. And that's the reason how is the government starting to question my morality? How can governments, that's the reason they are coming to this whole point of legalizing things. It's legal. I don't no longer consider this as illegal. What was the reason that gay and lesbianism was illegal? Then G.K. Chesterton once said this. G.K. Chesterton, if I remember Ravi Zacharias quoting this. He said that if you remove, if you need to remove a fence, before removing a fence, first stop by long enough and ask this question: why was the fence put on the first place? It is easier for us to remove any fence, but you need to stop by long enough to ask this question: why was there a reason to put up a fence like that? What was the reason for a fence like that? If you remove anything that was illegal at once and say that is legal anymore, you need to stop by and think as to why was it called illegal? Why was it called illegal? Things are going to turn around as the years are going by. Why was it illegal to be aborted? Why was abortion illegal? Why is abortion becoming legal these days? You need to stop by long enough and ask this question: why these things are taking place? We don't have time for that. And we don't want the government to question anything anything that is to come with me, with my own self. And that's the reason people have come to this whole point wherein they are calling themselves as secularists. I'm secular enough my mind is too open enough to think as to what I feel like doing, I'll do it. Even if it's coming to a point of killing a child. You say that the mother is more important than the child, the mother who has come out. Every life is important. We are thinking that the child in the womb is not a life, but it is a life. We are accountable. It's nothing less than murder. It is brutal murder to a child that is in the womb, a little child. Just because it has not seen the world, what is the right for us to kill the child? Abortion is becoming normal. Go down. It says that's why it comes to self-control, and there is no self-control. And they will be cruel. Yes, aren't they? Yes, the last days people are becoming cruel. Cruelty is legalized these days. All kinds of cruelty is legalized. They're becoming cruel and hate what is good. Now you talk anything good, you are old school person, man. Just walk away from this place. And these things are more cooler, which feels not good, which is wickedness, which is evil. Those things are more cool these days. And that's what it's standing about. And verse 4 says, they will betray their friends. We read that yesterday. They will betray their friends, be reckless, and be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. Why is that they are loving pleasure? Because they don't believe in God. And why is that they cannot love God? Because they love pleasure. Simple. Both go hand in hand. Right? They love pleasure. That's the reason they can't love God. And they don't want to love God. And verse 5 says, they will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. Acting religious is very easy. We have a bunch of them these days who are just acting religiously. Very religious they are. You see them on stage, you see them in the church, you see them in different places. They are so religious, but they have rejected being godly. That's what it says. They act religiously, but they will reject that power. The God who can make them godly, that power has been rejected. They will reject the power that could make them godly. Now what is it that can make you godly? It is the cross. It is the blood of Christ Jesus that can make you godly. That has got the power. There is power in the blood of Jesus. And that power is not taken into consideration. That's been rejected. Now religiosity is up. I can act religiously, but I would definitely reject the power that can make me religious. And that's where the world is in. Now, Paul is warning Timothy, and that's the same warning that I want to give each of you today. You know, it says in verse 5, towards the end, the last part, it says, stay away from people like that. They are more like these yeast that come in and just take up the whole dove. The whole dove. You won't even have a single part of the dough that has not been affected with that yeast. They just come in as small as a mustard seed, and they just spread it. Be careful to stay away from people like that. Let me tell you, we are living in a world which is surrounded by people like this. And I'm pretty sure in your schools, let me tell you, when you send your children to the schools, now I was just talking to people yesterday, and you know what? Even when I was in my 5th standard, I was told about evolution theory, how the world is coming into existence through evolution and Big Bang. When I was in my 5th standard. Now what is being taught? What are we teaching to our children? In our homes, in our Sunday schools, what are we teaching? We're just talking about Jonah's stories. We're just talking about Jonah's stories, and we're just talking about how Jesus did some small miracles, and that's it. And they're just thinking it as a fairy tale stories, and they're walking away. And it's so necessary for us, that we need to tell them the true gospel is. What the true gospel is. Are we in line? Are we matching in the line with what the world is teaching them? They're being bombarded all through every day. Every single day they are going to school, and the school children and their teachers and all the people around them they are bombarding them with so much of an information as to how the world should be and how you should be as a person in this world, how competitive you should be. Competitive is where we are taking our children into, being very competitive. And with the world, we need to be very competitive. And I should be first. I should be leading everything ahead in time. And when we are making them more and more competitive, we are forgetting the fact that this competitiveness would hit us back, would turn back against us, would sting us back. They are becoming more competitive, and they are leaving our families. They are just going abroad, studying and doing much, and they are earning more money. And they don't have any more time to take care of parents. Why? The parents are teaching them to be more competitive. They have become competitive. Yes, you wanted them to be first in the world, and they are first in the world. When was the last time that we cried out for our children so that they can be spiritual, they can be godly? When was the last time? You never know. You never know. And we come back to the passage that we've been reading, Romans chapter 1 verse 28 onwards. God abandoned them to do things that should have never done. They started to do things that they should have never done. There are things that you and I would start doing when we leave God. When God abandons us. Not we leaving God, when God leaves us. When we choose out on wickedness, and when we start to leave God and cling on to these things, God just abandons us. And at that point of time, people would start to do things that should have never been done. Human beings, I was saying the purpose, our very purpose that has been existing on this world is being lost. We lose out on that purpose as to why we came into this world. Nobody wants to know the purpose, and they just do whatever they feel like. And they start to do things they should have never done. Inhuman things they should have never done. That's just coming into picture. When we go down, verse 29 onwards, their lives become full of every kind of wickedness. What is this wickedness? We just mentioned about all those wickedness. Sin, greed, desire for money. People are selfish, and all that they love is their money. And they're greedy. And because of their greed, they're coming up with hatred, unloving people. They cannot love people, and they cannot forgive. Unforgiveness leads into more of hatred. More of hatred. We think that when we are hating people or we are not talking, we are holding up all these. When we see through the Bible, forgiveness, when it talks about forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you. If I have hatred with somebody, if I cannot forgive somebody, you know what? You are dying. That person is living a normal life. That person has nothing. He is not even thinking, or she is not even thinking. But you as a person are thinking of this all through your life. There are people who have had bitterness with somebody in their very young age, and till their last breath they could not leave it, and they did not have a long life because of their hatred, because of their unforgiveness. And all through they had this so much of bitterness within them that got them sick in their body. Forgiveness, let me tell you, when Jesus said forgive, This forgiveness is for you. If I have grudge against somebody and I don't forgive them, I am being affected. That person is not being affected. Just forgive them. Go and tell them, I forgive you. You're going to breathe, the oxygen that you're going to breathe after that would be very fresh. Your heart just opens up. When I'm saying this, I can feel my heart open up. And you will start to breathe in very deep, and you will definitely have the sigh. You will just come back home and you say that, brother, I had this hatred with you and I forgive you. You will come back home, or probably that moment you're going to have a sigh. Sigh is basically a deep breath. You'll just, that's it. That's what you're going to do. And God wants you to do that. You're going to live a life this is going to be perfect. That's the life that God gave into our hands. And when we leave out God, anything that is moral, that has to do with our morality, we just leave that. What is going to come into us is hate, greed, and the list just continues. Envy, any kind of envy, and then that leads into murder, that leads into quarreling, deception, and our behavior is so malicious. As we see, the very look in our face is so malicious, and then we start to gossip. Verse 30 says, these people turn out to become backstabbers. Yeah? They deceive their friends, backstabbers, haters of God, insolent, proud and boastful. They invent new ways of sinning. Every time they invent new ways of sinning, and they disobey their parents. They refuse to understand. They break their own promise. They refuse to understand. They become senseless. One version says, they become senseless. They become faithless, they become heartless, and they become ruthless. Basically, it means that they refuse to understand, they are senseless, they break their promises, they are faithless, okay? They are heartless. There is no heart for them. There is never a soft corner that is coming in. And they break, and they have no mercy. They have no mercy. Ruthless people turn out. Verse 32, we're going to end with chapter 1. It says, verse 32, they know God's justice requires that those who do these things deserve to die, yet they do them anyway. Worse yet, they encourage others to do them too. What they try to do is they encourage others to do. They encourage others to do. And this is where our world is getting into. And we got to pray. We got to ask God that Lord should not let us get into this aspect wherein we encourage others to do. And you don't have to encourage, you just do this on your own. And I'm meeting with these families that are coming in and saying, you know what? The father is encouraging the children to do what is wrong. We got to pray for against. Pray for us.
All to Jesus I surrender, Lord. I give myself to all to Jesus